This video is for the person who doesn't quite feel like they're where they want to be right now. This could be for two reasons. It could be because they have a bigger dream, a bigger vision, but they haven't taken the actions required to actually bring that into existence. Or it could be that they've taken steps, but they've come against resistance, and so their progress has been stalled. Either way, you can kind of feel like where you are isn't where you want to be, basically. It's exactly how I felt when I was in my last corporate job. On paper, like everything looked great and it felt great in some ways, and yet there was something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I just knew I wasn't where I needed to be, and I knew that I was leaving potential on the table. And so the long and short of it is that we all self-sabotage. This is literally the most human experience of the human experience. So our brains are wired to keep us safe. And there is many complex mechanisms in our brain, but we carry a lot of outdated systems in our brain, notably our caveman brain. And they're not outdated insofar as they're there to keep us alive, and they're there to feed our survival, right? But if we look at the world that we live in, a lot of the wiring in our caveman brain is no longer relevant to the world that we live in. We're not being chased by predators every day, right? And so because we carry a lot of those patterns and that neural wiring, our brain makes up stories to keep us in what feels like the familiar. Because in caveman days, if you were in your familiar territory, you were safe. If you were in unfamiliar territory, you were at risk of dying because you didn't know where the most basic resources that you would need to survive were, because you were in a new place. And so if you think about that in the context of a more modern scenario, for example, you are working in a corporate job. You are making a steady corporate paycheck, you're living a very comfortable lifestyle. However, you feel like there's something more that you want to be doing. Maybe you've been thinking about going off and creating your own business or being a solopreneur, or perhaps there's a side hustle or a project that you've wanted to put your energy toward while keeping your 9-to-5. Maybe it's starting a new hobby, maybe it's starting a new business, maybe it's starting a podcast. You have a dream or some desires that maybe don't even quite make sense, but they're there and they've been with you for years. Now, you have maybe been in this corporate job for a while. It feels safe. Even though maybe you don't love your job, it doesn't quite challenge you, you know that it's not filling that need, you stay because it's familiar. Now, when you think about being incredibly successful, doing what you really love, like maybe it's the idea of having a podcast or writing a book that becomes an incredible platform where so many people are learning something new and you become really successful at it. Note, when you think about that, this would have been me 2 years ago. Best-selling podcast or best-selling author? No. I'm not good enough for that. I sent in some writing samples in my university creative writing class and I did not get good feedback. Like, I like writing, but I can't see myself being a best-selling author. It's just not on the cards for me. That is actually self-sabotage, because I'm not in control of what people buy my book or want my knowledge. For all I know, I could absolutely be a best-selling author, but not with that thinking. So because that concept is actually unfamiliar territory, my mind is going to do what it was trained to do for our caveman ancestors. And it's going to very smartly tell me stories to keep me where I am and to de-incentivize me to go after the thing that my soul is actually craving to call in. So you're getting the picture right now. This is great news, by the way, because there are countless methodologies, modalities, schools of thought out there that help to rewire your brain. There's neurolinguistic programming, there's talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, there's positive intelligence, all of these things. So I'm going to break it down to like a very simple framework that I've looked at all of these things. Like, I'm obsessed with this. This is what I do for myself, and it's what I do for my clients. And so when we're talking about rewiring the brain, ultimately we're thinking of our brain as a computer that has outdated software. Software where these beliefs, right, these stories, these neural pathways that are in effect trying to keep us safe are not actually serving our highest potential. So this is great news. You are in control of how you use your mind. You can't control the first thought that comes up. That's just not how it works. You can, however, control what you do and how you respond to that thought. And so there's 3 R's, okay? 3 R's to rewire your brain. It's recognize, reframe, replace. So step 1 is to recognize. It's simply bringing mindfulness and awareness to the thoughts and the beliefs that might be running the show in the background and might be running the show in the foreground more than you've brought your attention to. So really, awareness is the foundation of change, right? Start noticing the patterns. Does the voice in your head sound harsh, repetitive? Is it very critical? When you actually think about the vision, the dream, whatever it is that you're really desiring for yourself, in fact, I'll give you a very simple exercise for this. You ready? Grab your pen and paper because you're going to want to write this down. So, when we are trying to cultivate awareness, to know what are the limiting beliefs and the limiting thoughts that are actually sabotaging us from our highest success, our highest potential, think about the dream ideal life that you want to be living in 5 years. And I mean, you want to be living, not what you think you should be living. So allow yourself to get expansive here. If you need to sit in silent contemplation or meditation to let this come to you, do that. So think about what is the ideal and get wild, get wildly expansive. You might even notice your inner critic as you're thinking about this. So note the inner critic and keep doing this exercise. Once you have arrived at this dream scenario, write it down. Write it down in great detail. Where do you live? What do you do? What time of day do you typically wake up? What kinds of activities are you doing on the day-to-day basis? What kinds of relationships do you have? What kind of clothes are you wearing? What kind of food are you eating? Like, get very specific. And as you are writing this down, again, you might notice that the inner critic in your mind and your inner narrative starts coming into play. Just notice, keep writing. Then we're just taking it a step further and going a little bit deeper here. Speak out the vision once you've written it down. Speak it out loud, read it out loud 3 times. This is where you're gonna notice, you're gonna bring your awareness to the thoughts in your mind, the thoughts that come up, the negative thoughts, okay? It's great if you have positive thoughts, but we're looking for the sneaky limiting beliefs that are really living in our subconscious mind or unconscious mind that are going to come up. You're going to write them down. So that's too big for me. I haven't earned it yet. I need to work harder. I don't have enough experience. I need to have this amount of money in the bank before I can think about this. It's not in the cards for me, right? Whatever comes up, write down what it is. It might be super, super specific, right? Like, well, if I do this, then my family is going to think I'm selfish. Okay, good to know. Once you know what you're working with, that is step 1. That is recognize, and that is huge because each of those limiting thoughts or limiting beliefs holds a key to your freedom, to your highest success, your highest timeline. And so now you know what you're working with, and you can get to work on rewiring it. So next R is reframe. Reframing is about looking at that limiting belief or that limiting thought and asking yourself, what is this thought actually trying to protect me from? Because these thoughts are negative, right? Our brain is literally wired to pay attention to negative thoughts more than positive thoughts. Negative thoughts have 3 times as much potency as positive ones. Again, survival mechanism, the beauty and the complexity of our brain. And so what is this story actually? It's trying to keep you safe. So what is it trying to protect you from? Is there something in your past that perhaps has happened that your mind is projecting into your future, expecting to happen again? Because remember, whatever you think is actually what you attract. So often when we're worrying, when we're constantly anxious, when we're stressed, there's an inner narrative that's playing on a loop. And when you think about it, worrying is actually attracting the very thing that you don't want to happen. It is like praying for the thing that you don't want to happen. So when you realize how impactful and how influential your thoughts are on your reality, literally, it's wild. You start to realize the importance of thinking that everything is always working out for me, for example. One of your limiting beliefs might be that everything is never working out for me. So this is where you have the second R, which is reframe. We've talked about recognize, and we've talked about reframe. So reframing, what is it protecting you from? And is there a more empowered, affirmative way to protect yourself from that, like a healthier way? That's the reframe. And then step 3 is replace. So for every single limiting belief and thought that you have listed out, I want you to write down 3 positive affirmations related to each of those negative thoughts. So if, for example, I'm really bad with money is one of the beliefs that come up. So I'm never gonna have the dream house or the villa in France that I actually want in my ideal, expansive life vision 5 years from now, because I'm not good with money. Okay, so what could 3 affirmations for that be? Money flows to me with ease. I am good with money. Whatever comes up. It's going to feel uncomfortable, by the way. It's okay if it feels uncomfortable. That means you're on the right track, because your nervous system is going to require a recalibration period to actually become comfortable with those new beliefs. Those new beliefs, as far as your nervous system is concerned, are new territory, unfamiliar territory. And remember, unfamiliar means potential threats to our survival. But you know that when you truly believe that money does flow to you with ease, the thought is going to bring that into your reality. You know this. Energy is 100% contagious, like attracts like. If you have a wealth mindset where everything is always working out for me, I get paid for living in my authenticity and for sharing my gifts with the world, whatever, insert money affirmation here. When you truly believe that, it happens. This is the law of attraction, right? This, like, literally quantum. Listen, I have a science background. This is why I love this shit, because there's so much science to back it up. So when we talk about replace, the third R, it is about replacing those superhighways, right? The brain is always going to take the path of least resistance. And right now, the path of least resistance is speaking those negative thoughts and beliefs that are keeping you might not even know that these are running the show in the background, but they're keeping you where you don't really want to be anymore. So replacing them. Writing down those 3 affirmations, you can speak them out loud, you can do meditations. There's a ton of different energetic practices that you can do to really anchor in those new beliefs. So this is where it gets into the mindset work and the practice. But 3 R's to rewire your brain and to really understand where you're holding yourself back. I hope this was helpful. It was kind of turned into a mini masterclass. I could talk about this for hours. Let me know what questions come up for you and what you want me to go deeper in. This is my first video on LinkedIn, so there's a first for everything. I post videos like every single day to Instagram and TikTok, so you can follow me there if you're on those channels. It's at Coach Jess O'Kane, Coach Jess O'Kane, all one word. But let me know what you want me to dig into deeper, and I will make that the subject or the topic of my next video on LinkedIn. So happy Friday, and here is to rewiring for the most empowered, abundant, healthy, and wealthy 2025.